Welcome to all of you who are joining. I'm just going to leave it for a minute just to let everybody get in and join the session. Thanks again for joining. If you've just joined, I'm just waiting for more people to enter. We've still got a minute or so, and then we'll start the webinar. Okay, let's begin. I think we've got quite a few people on the call already. So good afternoon to our panelists and delegates who have joined us for the second Solar Power Africa 2021 webinar series in conjunction with the South African Energy Storage Association. I'm Neil Piper, the head of content for Messi Frankfurt, South Africa, and I'll be hosting the webinar today. The webinar will be addressing battery storage and IDC's involvement and their funding instruments available. Just a few house rules. Please post your questions in the chat function. The questions will be reviewed. In the past few webinars, we've had so many questions coming through. We will moderate those sessions and we'll get to as many of the questions as possible in the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If we don't get to your question, we will answer those questions on our platform, on our website, post the webinar. So we'll try and get through all those questions today. And then it really is my pleasure to welcome the panelists for today, Joanne Dean from the South African Energy Storage Association and Ian Davis from the IDC. The agenda for today, I'm just going to run through that quickly for everybody. We're going to have a short welcome by Joanne, and then we go into the IDC presentation. Ian will be running through that. And we've got our Q&A session that I've mentioned, and please don't forget to send those questions. Next steps, and then I will close the webinar, and hopefully we will be done within the hour that you've allocated for this webinar. And then, as an introduction to the webinar, Solar Power Africa is South Africa's premier exhibition and conference for the solar, PV, and energy storage markets, with SAPFIA as its main endorsing association. Solar Power Africa is scheduled to take place as a hybrid event from the 13th to the 15th of October at the Cape Town International Convention Centre. And it's a joint venture between Messi Frankfurt, Set Solar, who organize Solar Power International, North America's largest show for the solar and related sectors, and Schneck, the organizers of the largest solar power show in the world. Messi Frankfurt is the third largest trade fair company in the world, with an established portfolio operation in South Africa, and we run over 10 trade and consumer fairs. I would now like to welcome Joanne Dean from the South African Energy Storage Association. She's the board member and their spokesman. Over to you, Jo.
Hi. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I seem to be stuck in the morning. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jo Dean. I'm representative for the South African Energy Storage Association. We are very excited to present all these webinars to, how can I say, enlighten the public and all the attendees on the wonders of storage and all related topics. We're very grateful to our hosts, Mr. Frankfurt, and to Neil Piper and his team for the excellent service and for tabling this. And also a big welcome to IDC today, who have requested an opportunity to showcase what they can do on storage. I thought of starting off with a bit about the story of storage. Because if you think about it, only a few years ago, the concept of aggregating batteries to provide grid services or to facilitate peer-to-peer electricity trading seemed like science fiction. So therefore, I'm calling this the story. Leaps in adjacent digital technologies such as artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, blockchain are multiplying, and the use of benefits of battery deployment. They are mutually reinforcing mechanisms, not just improvements in battery performance and cost. And that is why this sector is so dynamic. That's why we're so excited. Storage and renewables may be used in the same conversation, but there's more to this than the technology. It isn't just about integrating intermittent wind and solar output. Battery solutions, which can be deployed rapidly and with pinpoint precision, can be used to make overall grid more effective, resilient, regardless of the generation sources. We're an exciting technology. This is what changes the story of storage up a lot. And a battery storage story is one that's becoming a supercharged one around the world. But wait, it's like a glow eye, there's more. Battery prices are falling, and storage markets are developing far faster than ever anticipated. Globally, storage solutions are already a focal point of national energy policy in many countries and are establishing the energy systems in more mature energy sectors. Energy storage, sorry, I'm losing my bandwidth. Apologies, everybody. I've got a very bad Wi-Fi signal. Okay, so we can say entering the energy storage in South Africa and what is being alleged. Battery storage is having its moment. In addition to flexibility and rapidly falling prices, advances in digital technologies such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, and predictive analytics are spurring innovative storage business models that weren't even conceivable a few years ago. Nobody would believe then where we are now. The drivers for South Africa are most definitely the cost and the optimized performance improvements relating to manufacturing economies of scale. Costs are dropping and performance is definitely improving. Year on year, we see the changes. Think of grid modernization. The growth of battery storage goes hand in hand with grid modernization efforts, including the transition to smart grids. Batteries help to unlock the full potential of smart technologies and vice versa. Following the global movement towards renewables, we are all familiar with the support for renewable energy and emissions reduction, and it's also driving the adoption of battery storage solutions. We see this both in the corporate and in the public sectors. Battery storage can help balance the grid and improve power quality regardless of the generation source. We will see Eskom testing this in the new World Bank tender that is very much publicized and now out. Most countries see the system operator changing its wholesale market structure to allow batteries to provide capacity and ancillary services. We in South Africa look forward to those turning points when the national grid and the utility distribution services of the municipalities adopt this. We're now going to move our story to manufacturing and localization. Enter the recent TIPS report that was distributed and the inputs from TTIC Kharagpuri, Chief Director of Green Industries. In essence, they identified where the battery value chain in South Africa is competitive and is critical, so as to channel supported resources into the most sustainable activities and 4 possible technical pathways that are proposed for development of battery value chain. These would be battery manufacturing, the much debated mineral refining, cell manufacturing, and battery recycling. A truly exciting future waits. But every story has a negative and a positive side, just like a battery. And this would be where the financial support partners are able to change our story from fiction to reality. Enter Ian Davis of the IDC. The Industrial Development Corporation Department is in a national development finance institution mandated to promote economic growth and industrial development and to develop domestic industrial capacity. As key implementing agency of industrial policy, the IDC's activities generally center on the National Development Plan, the NDP, the New Growth Plan, the NGP, and the Industry Policy Action Plan, the IPAP. So let's see if Ian can regale us with how he's going to turn the positive side up and become the enabler to our growing sector. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. There was just a little bit of interference, I think, on your side. So just apologies to everybody there if you didn't get all of that. But thank you, Joe. And I think now it's the moment we've all been waiting for. And it really is my pleasure to welcome Ian Davis, the deal maker, machinery, equipment, and electronics at the IDC, to address you. And I know Ian has been super excited about this opportunity to engage with you guys. And he might even share a joke or two along the way. We're hoping so. So Ian, over to you. I'm going to stop sharing, and you can start on your side.
Thank you, Neil. I just need you to, okay, here we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be invited to this webinar. I would like to thank Neil for adjudicating today's webinar, and also Joanne from SAESA, who's giving us a platform to talk about battery storage. So I thought the first thing we should do is, IDC is very much into the next generation, and the next generation is that which is post-COVID. Well, some of us are still in COVID, some of us are still having vaccines. But I think it's very, very important that one of the things that we've seen is that COVID for the battery storage industry has been quite positive. So we're starting off with a joke. My little guy there, he's called Bob the Battery. He's energetic, he's quite positive, but unfortunately also has a negative side. So let's start off, sorry about that, and find out what is driving the demand for the battery industry. And there's also a very important question that we need to answer, which is how do we store energy for today how do we store energy for tomorrow that is made for today? So we started with a little bit of a contentious issue, and we can see that from what is driving the demand is two major sections. One obviously is Eskom on the energy procurement programs, and we can see there that there's two major rounds. One is going to be an interim round of 12,000 megawatts, sorry, of 40 billion rand, which is 2,000 megawatts, and the larger one, which is 12,000 megawatts. Now, we all know in the first 2,000 megawatts, there's been a little bit of a contention where we talk about that swear words called power ships that have certainly taken the news. But what we can see is, on a more serious note, is that energy storage is one of the technologies that becomes quite prevalent going forward in terms of fixing up the electricity problem that we have. Not only is it a single category on its own, but what we find is that energy storage, coming back to our second question, how do we store energy for tomorrow that is made today? If we have wind and the wind is blowing in the morning and we only need the energy in the afternoon, the answer is battery storage. Same thing on solar. We have sun that is being created, that's making electricity now, but we need power a little bit later on or at night. How do we do that? And the answer is battery storage. So we find that battery storage actually cross-cuts over wind and solar, and of itself is a nominated sector within the REAP program. The private sector is also probably, for me, the more exciting at this stage, because as a banker, one of the questions we will always ask is there some sort of certainty of supply? So if we are selling electricity, who's going to buy it? One of the things that we've always had as a problem is when you're waiting for the bigger projects to be commissioned, is how long is the lead time in terms of manufacturing a plant? You could be manufacturing, or the whole process could be a couple of years, and then we are waiting for payments or income that only is generated in 4 or 5 or 6 years' time. The private sector resolves it quite nicely in the fact that right now they are already installing and looking at different types of solutions. So if you look at the little joke there, you're billing me twice because I'm bipolar. No, it's because you're rechargeable. And that's really the essence of what we're looking at. If you look what's happened, certainly in my neighborhood, we've had two electrical outages this week. So what's the solution? Many of us have got inverters which convert AC power into DC power. It gets stored over the last couple of weeks, and as lights go off, boom, we now have the solution of how we stored energy that was made a few days ago, and we spend it today. So that load shedding, the load shedding environment that we have, ironically, has been the greatest catalyst for the private sector, specifically within the battery storage industry. There's also a move towards certainty of supply. So we have peaking powers. We have companies that don't want to be affected by load shedding. So a lot of solutions in and around this issue of load shedding have become quite prevalent. To the extent that this sector has become a multi-billion-dollar sector, I've heard figures that this market, certainly on the private sector, is around about between 2 and 4 billion per annum and growing. There are also other commercial realities, such as electric vehicles, many vehicles that are, if you just go into more of the factory type environment, your forklifts, your loaders, in the mining industry, many of your underground vehicles are converting from diesel into electric vehicles. So there's a very great demand naturally and organically for battery storage, both on the private sector and also those that are going to be supporting the ESCOM procurement programs in the future. From our point of view as the IDC, we're very, very keen in looking at the following industries. And if anybody has applications or anyone we would like to discuss with absolute pleasure. So we focus very much on the power sector, things such as electrical motors, transformers, obviously batteries, boilers, electrical substations, switch gears, wind turbines and solar panels, and control instrumentation. Ultimately, we call this the balance of plant. And this seems to be where South Africa has an advantage over China. We find there's a fundamental problem is that China can, let's say, make a battery at almost at a cost that we cannot even begin to manufacture in South Africa. So then the question then comes about how do we compete with China? And this is where balance of plant becomes quite important. We can make the inverters, we can make the switch gear, we can do the battery management systems. And I'll explain in the next slide that a whole industry has developed around these problems. So this slide sort of gives us an overview of what we have seen as IDC in terms of applications to the IDC. Let's start off on the left-hand side. You'll see that there's an underground vehicle. One of the problems we have with mining is that diesel machines make a spark, and many of our, certainly in the coal mining industry, it's hazardous, and the last thing you want is an explosion. So some of the mines are retrofitting their diesel underground machinery, and they're putting in lithium-ion battery packs, and also associated to that are charging stations. Underneath that, now we have the whole property sector that is looking to put solar on roof. Now, there's almost the question, you've got rooftops, what do you do with them? Instead of leaving them bare, why not put solar panels on? The solar panels have got the same issue. We're making power now, but how can we use it later? And the battery solution becomes quite prevalent for that. Underneath that, we have the forklifts. Forklifts have always used batteries, and there's been a switch from lead to lithium. One of the issues that we've found with the switch from lead to lithium is lithium fundamentally is quite expensive. So there's been a debate is, do we lease the battery packs or do we sell the battery packs? And what we've seen is, as much as there has been a debate on leasing battery packs, ultimately the purchaser of the forklifts or the loading equipment have tended to see this as yellow equipment, and they'd go to a place like Westbank and just fund it. On the top left, you'll see, sorry, top right, is the whole issue of solar systems, and this is the renewable energy market. You've got wind, you've got solar, but coming back to the main question, how do we store energy created today for tomorrow? Again, that comes down to the battery. And as IDC, we are now looking at the next generation, because batteries have evolved from lead. Everything now is lithium. So the question is, what is post-lithium? And one of the technologies, certainly that South Africa is looking at, is the vanadium redox flow. One of the reasons, because we I think we have the third biggest deposits of vanadium in the world. And this could be the next generation. The difference between lithium and redox right now as we stand is that they say that lithium goes, let's say, up to a 6-hour storage. And if you want to have longer storage up to a day, redox may be able to solve that. In the middle, this is where it's interesting to see where we're going. That's the smart grid system. So at the end of the day, what is a smart grid system? It's really one thing. It's a giant UPS system. Instead of having UPS for your computer, you have a UPS for your city. The question is, where does electricity come from? So the one source could be from Eskom, another source could be from renewable energies, but ultimately it's going to run through a battery pack system that will ensure that we have a stable electricity grid. Now, South Africa is very good on what we see over here, battery management systems. The battery management system is the heart and soul of the battery. So you'll bring in a container from China. Now the question is, what do you do with it? And this is where South Africans have developed quite a bit of expertise. They tailor make the imported battery for the client in terms of optimization, because the big question in lithium is, can you recharge it? Does it become commercially viable? And is the wattage output stable? And the answer to that seems to be yes. So South Africa has developed very strong battery management systems. We have certainly funded this, and I can attest that this is the place where South Africa can fight back and almost become leaders in the world. So really, outside of the battery management system, which tends to become a lot of electrical and software, what else can be done? And that's the balance of plant, which becomes the actual, what houses the battery. It could be the steel frames, it could be inverters, the electrical systems, and in and around the balance of plant, there's a lot of opportunity. Now, one of the issues coming forward in the renewable industry game, just like America had the concept of mega, we have the concept of localization, is in the big REAP programs, the foreigners are going to be obliged to buy locally. Now, within the balance of plant and the battery management system, we have seen that this now converts the localization of any battery solution up to potentially 60%. So it really becomes a perfect industry that can benefit from any of the REAP programs going forward. I mentioned there has been this debate about the leasing of battery packs, because at one stage lithium was very expensive. And the question is, if I'm going to sell you a forklift and then I'm going to add on another 150,000 Rand for a lithium pack, would the client be able to afford it? It seems as if the leasing of battery packs hasn't really taken off. And as I mentioned before, the client themselves tend to just finance this as yellow material. Then there's always been the debate about the power purchase agreements. What happens if I create a whole battery site and I become almost a mini Eskom and I supply power to mines or to shopping centers? There's a lot of debate about that. We haven't seen too much bankable activity, but there's a lot of debate. And I think as we go forward and the independent power producers become more prevalent in South Africa, the power purchase agreements, this concept, and the independent producer will become a major player within the industry. So really our objective as IDC is to look at import replacement. We're very keen on localizing South Africa as a DFI. We were created in 1940, and our objective is to upskill the commercial development and the industrialization of South Africa. We are very keen on localization. We'd also like to support our clients to export to the rest of the continent, because one of the advantages of the battery industry that we've seen, let's say, compared to the solar PV market, is who's going to buy the turbines for wind if the REAP program hasn't taken off at their own contracts. Whereas the battery industry, we can sell to the clients. We already have export market into Africa. You can have little smart grid communities. So it really is a sector that I'm particularly biased and in favor of. That's why from a battery storage point of view, as I said, it cross-cuts all the technologies. Just to summarize, it cross-cuts the renewables, it actually goes into commercial, it's something that we can export, and South Africa has developed local expertise. And as I've said, the local content right now is about 40% on some of our clients, or even aiming to get to 60%. Another thing that is important, and certainly from our IDC, is the whole issue of transformation, and we do support it and we do encourage it. So these are the schemes. I don't want to go too much into detail, but you'll see the most important thing on the scheme is the price. That's where the green mark is. So this is a manufacturing competitive enhancement program called MSEP, and really what we're trying to do here is we have cheaper funds that are assisting manufacturing capital to working capital, and also for the expansion of new plant and equipment. And I think the most important thing that everybody would like to ask is, what's the price? And the price right now is a fixed rate of 4%. That's definitely, for what I understand, the cheapest in the market. We're also looking to encourage and develop the youth of South Africa. And depending on your youth equity rates, you can get from prime -2 down to prime -3. And again, the green tick shows us these sort of levels that we can get to. The other question is, what happens if we have larger projects? Can IDC fund it? So we're going to look at two overviews. One is project development finance, and one of our very, very useful programs called the revolving credit facility. So for large scale projects, you often have to develop the project. So we're going to set up a battery pack plant. Let's say we're going to do it in, I don't know, Cut2. We need to do a feasibility study. Is there enough sun? Is it close to the grid? How we're going to integrate. So pre-feasibility study has to be done. In order to do that, we have pre-feasibility funding, where we almost partner with the sponsor to do an initial assessment. And hopefully the result of that initial assessment is a go-to feasibility stage. At feasibility stage, we now are going to work towards getting the money involved. We're doing the EPC contracts, we're doing all the engineering work, and there's also funding to get this project into a bankable stage. And once you've got the bankable stage, obviously this now becomes the most exciting part, which is now you've got to raise potentially hundreds of millions and sometimes billions of rands to actually physically build those plants. And we can participate certainly on debt and equity, or both. Then something that we see that is quite prevalent is, how do we fund a project? And this is where we're going to talk about the revolving credit facility. So let's just say I have a mining house that wants to put in a battery system, and it's 10 million rand, and we don't necessarily have 10 million rand. So what we can do, we almost take the contract, and we, instead of factoring like an invoice, we'll work backwards and say, in order to deliver that product, we need X amount of money in terms of raw materials, in terms of labor, and we can advance that. So you can see we actually on the revolver, we advance the money. The applicant then builds the solution. The solution is then delivered to the client, and the client then pays us. When I say pays us into a joint bank account generally. We then take our fees, and the profits go back to the applicant. That revolving facility then revolves again. So we can do that as many times as you want. And it really is an effective way of funding, I'd say, deals or project deals that are not too big and not too small. It is quite a lengthy process, but it does work, and our clients that have used it have raved about it. Just in closing, we do know that IDC sometimes have a reputation of being quite difficult to deal with. So I can assure you, we are here to help you. We certainly are open for business. I'm always available for a cup of coffee, at the IDC. If our coffee machine works, I think it's still closed under COVID. But I'm always available. You can always send me an email. I think probably the best way to do any transaction is let's come to the IDC, let's discuss the transaction, because we can put in different types of funding structures, we can bring in people, we can, if there's shortage of equity, we can structure around it. But I can assure we have a dedicated team. We do have experience. And just to finish off, Bob the battery says, I'm all done, but I'm pretty sure I forgot something. And thank you very much for entertaining me and listening to me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you very much. It's so nice to get a concise and very clear presentation. I think the audience would have enjoyed that a lot. And what it does is it affords us more time for Q&A, which is so important because we really want to get to the heart of the topic today and try and cover the questions that we've got. So on that note, we're going to go over to the Q&A now. Jo has been moderating the questions that have been coming in, and she's also been getting questions privately that people have sent directly to her. So Jo, on that note, I'm going to hand over to you to run through the questions. And Ian, I hope you're ready for them. I hope you've been preparing. Because
I've got my cat ready, so just in case I can't answer, the cat will jump on the webinar camera.
Okay, no, that's absolutely perfect. And then I think the big thing is as well, if there are any questions to Ian, please do get hold of him. His details are on the screen there. I'm going to keep it on there now so that you guys can take some time just to take that down. But Jo, over to you and to the questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. And thank you, Ian. You did rise to the challenge and kept the positive side up. So thank you very much for that. SAESA, really welcomes your contribution. I think that it is a new industry for all, or new ways for all, and storage is very much regarded as disruptor. So in anything, whether it goes from financing to implementation, to even choosing which storage technology you want to, there is a level of uncertainty. I think that your presentation at least is very clear, and you really put your hand out there to encourage people to come forward. So I think the hesitancy that a lot of people have, that saying storage can't be funded or there is an opportunity, really has your gap. I think Ian has done a marvelous job on that. I'd like to go to some of the questions now. Ian, I think I don't want to bombard you from the beginning. So there's one that's just slightly different to what you presented on, but I would like you to answer it because I thought it was quite part of our sort of mandate. We also encourage training and leadership and research on that. So we have a question for you from a student at Wits University doing the Master Degrees in Business Management in the field of energy and leadership. And they have asked, they're very interested in doing a mini thesis, master's level research project this year on the localization of battery storage in South Africa. And she has asked, is there any specific research questions that the IDC or others would like to have researched regarding battery storage in South Africa? Ian, what would you encourage the student to do?
I would encourage the student to look at the localization opportunities, because at the end of the day, battery storage is, if we want to make it as an industry in South Africa, is not really about importing the batteries from China, but what we can do locally in South Africa. And again, just what are the localization opportunities? Just to give an example, most balance of plant solutions need inverters. So can we make inverters in South Africa? And I think that would be very, very relevant if you can look at additional localization opportunities. Thank you.
Ian, thank you. I think that's great. And I hope our vet student contacts you to further unpack on that. I have a question for you from one of the attendees. He says, hi, so far we see mostly what looks like back-to-back. Do you finance BTC on the home, small office, SME battery and inverter market, with the offering being solar ready or with solar?
We can fund any company that has a market. And ultimately, what you'll have to do as an applicant is to show us that you have a market. So you could say this year we've sold 10 million rands worth of home systems. So your market is, let's say, the Voltex or the wholesaler market. And if you've got some sort of track order and can prove that you are successful, there's no real reason why we can't fund you. On the proviso, remember that we are the Industrial Development Corporation. So we do want to see some localization. We won't fund people that are just importing and selling. There must be some local content. But certainly, yeah, a lot of the companies that we funded, some of their business is literally selling wholesale kits into the wholesale and retail market for sure. We can definitely look at that.
Thank you, Ian. We have a question from a candidate that has previously approached IDC. He is asking, whenever we have approached IDC for support, we have been asked if we have an offtake or a purchase order. What support is available without this in place?
So remember I said that there's two major markets. One is the renewable energy market. So let's just park that for the moment. And the other one is the private market, the commercial market. So really what you have to do is prove to us there is a market. And if you can prove to us there is a market, then you don't need an offtake agreement, because we can work on, as I said, you're supplying 5 different electrical wholesalers, and we can speak to those electrical wholesalers and they can say, well, we are going to support this client. And if the feedback is positive, then we can certainly look at your business. So that negates the fact of having to have a solid offtake agreement, because many people selling into the commercial market cannot get offtake agreements, cannot get contracts because they don't exist. So you can always speak to me, we can relook at that, but certainly that shouldn't be an hindrance. Thank you.
So for attendee, I think maybe try knocking on Ian's door. He seems to have the answers for us. Ian, a slightly more difficult one for you to answer. We have a question: why would you not fully exploit the vanadium flow battery technology, given its safety profile, the vast resources available, and the electrolyte facility being commissioned in East London by Bushveld Energy?
So I wonder if Bushveld Energy knows that, well, we are partners with Bushveld Energy. So the answer is we are exploiting it. We are doing a massive, we've done a massive investment into that. And I think IDC can comfortably say that we are the pioneers together with Bushveld's looking at the next stage of battery development from lithium into vanadium. Yeah, we're very much playing in that industry for sure. We've made substantial investments into that sector.
That's great. I have a question for you, more, I think maybe it's related to the program, I'm not sure, but I'm going to pose it to you to give fairness to all questions passed. The gentleman is asking, Eskom is currently procuring battery storage, but appears to have many delays. Is there any reason for this? I'm not sure if he's referring to, directly to IDC or funding challenges, but maybe you'd like to just give your opinion on the Eskom procurement of storage.
So I've seen that there's a couple of answers to that. Number one, a lot of people are coming with novel battery solutions that Eskom needs to test and ensure that these things are actually do what they say they do. That's the one answer. The other side, I also know that the Eskom and the municipalities are rolling out smart systems, and depending whether you've won the tender, some of these are tender-based systems. I know the municipalities are almost trying to, I think it's almost sell off, let's say, 1 million of their electrical meters, and to a private organization. They do the collection, they do the raising of the finance and the installation. So it could be as simple as you haven't won a tender or your technology has not been proven. Hence, going back, what I found, because I'm quite a pragmatic person, is if you want to get into the battery industry, step one right now is not the Eskom market. That's very, very difficult. It might be massive in the future, but right now the commercial market seems to be where all the innovation is. And certainly the clients that we've seen in the commercial market are doing very, very well. hence I've said, we might have had COVID in the country, but from the battery management commercial clients, guys that focus on the commercial sector, they've had no COVID. They've done exceptionally well this year. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Ian, from a point of view of you having engaged in lithium-ion battery projects, the gentleman would also just like further clarification on, does the IDC have any concerns on the fire risks and the safety protections of lithium batteries? And on that same note, I would also say I'm going to post my email address. The attendee is also very welcome to contact me. It's one of the areas that we're looking at on a SAESA platform to put answers out there in the marketplace. But Ian, if you can answer from an IDC perspective, please.
The simple answer is yes, but our clients have managed to come up with, I come back to the concept of the battery management system and the concept of the balance of plant, and our clients have overcome that. They do supply a system that works. If there are any issues or comebacks, they will always replace. From an environmental health and safety, IDC as one of the components within our due diligence, we have experts that will look at any of the health concerns. And to date, we are funded, we have been successful. Some or most of our battery applications have been successful. We haven't really seen any hazardous issues at this stage, not to say that it can't happen. But ultimately, I think most of these risks are manageable. And at the end of the day, we have to develop a sector. And by definition, we have to be cautious, we have to be understanding, but also we have to be proactive. And there's always a way. South Africans are very proactive. And there's no question that whatever issues we have, the battery applicants and the manufacturers will resolve it. I've got no doubt about it. South Africans really are innovative. Certainly when it comes back to the battery management systems, we are world leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. We've got a gentleman asking just if you could give a quick answer on what are the current ROIs on battery projects that you've seen or that you've engaged in?
I'm going to answer it in another way, because at the end of the day, IDC has a very simple formula. When we lend you money, please pay us back. That's it. It's got nothing to do with ROIs. We lend you 10 million rand, pay it back. Your returns, your profitability ultimately are yours. Thank you.
Okay. I see a lot of the delegates are asking about whether the sessions will be shared. Yes, there will be a lot of sharing post this, and any further questions to Ian will also be answered. From that point of view, we'll make sure that every question is answered. I just want to move to my other screen. If you can just give me 2 seconds. I just want to get to the next question for you. Sorry, I've got some that came in separately. Ian, are there any local suppliers accredited with Oems?
Yes, there are. Unfortunately, I can't disclose, but if you contact me, I can certainly put you in touch with them. The answer is yes. Definitely.
Thank you.
One thing, if I can just emphasize, I think we don't realize how sophisticated some of our battery suppliers are in this country. We really are. Outside of China, China manufactures the battery cells and brings in the actual electrolyte. But the South Africans really are innovative. We are tops. We have got OEM relationships. We have got battery management systems that are tried and tested. They've been tried and tested by international companies. They are tried and tested by the mining houses. We really are up there. It's really an industry that is something that we can be proud of.
Indeed. And thank you for how can I say, emphasizing that. That's good to hear from the mouths of others as well, from outside. Ian, any future opportunities that you see that people could maybe focus on for South Africa for battery power? Marine, you did touch a little bit on power purchase agreements, etc. Leasing, would you give us some of your opinions on what people should be focusing on?
So somebody mentioned marine. I think marine is a very big one. We have quite a large boat building industry, And if you're building a boat for 10 million rand and you're going to put in a R500,000 rand lithium battery solution, it really doesn't become overly significant. So from a cost point of view and from a practicality point of view, it's certainly an area that people can look at. Anything that uses lead batteries, so jacks, hoists, forklifts, what's the name, golf carts, there are many, many industries. Then we can start looking at things like balance of plant. So instead of actually looking for the battery itself, what about just cutting pieces of steel that make the housing for batteries? What about just making the artwork, graphics? I mean, there's a lot that can go just into the balance of plant part. As opposed, one of the issues with lithium batteries is that it's fundamentally quite expensive. But if you just have an industry that supports this industry, so the balance of plant that supports the housing and the creating of the battery solutions, that's a whole other industry that we can certainly look at. If you take an example of these shipping containers, you can take a shipping container and convert it into a battery storage container. And anything related to that, say inverters, transformers, the cabling, all of that are opportunities that you can look in and around the battery management systems. So the more successful people are trying to differentiate themselves, because if everybody's just selling inverter systems for load shedding, then really what you're doing is selling a commodity. The more successful people are selling solutions. And those solutions are one of the questions was, what's the ROI? So that's a different market. But also, what about selling solutions in a market that nobody's playing in? For instance, how many people are playing in the underground mining sector, where you just need to change from diesel into battery power? A very, very big sector. So look at all these sort of opportunities in and around batteries as well. Thank you.
Wow. I hope everybody's listening and seeing maybe these gaps in the market, and that was very insightful. Thank you. I think I want to just ask you the one more that's talking about comparing technologies, and then maybe we could get into some direct questions on the actual funding processes. So just one last one. It is one of the first questions posed that there was an opinion that they disagree on the ability of South Africa to make cost competitive batteries. Bushveld Energy feels they can play competitively through the vertical battery chain with huge amounts of local content. Do you think the other battery technologies have the ability to be competitive in what you've seen being presented to you or shared with you at the IDC?
So one of the benefits I have as an IDC is that I see companies' balance sheets. And I can tell you without a doubt, South African companies in battery solutions are making some very, very good money. So they are certainly competing. It's nice that there are contentious views, and they are very nice that there are alternative battery sources, and is battery better, and flywheels, and what is the future? It's all exciting. This is what it's all about. We can't only have one opinion. So I welcome any debate or any comments within the industry, but we have certainly seen at the IDC that some of these battery suppliers are making some proper money. And from an IDC point of view, it might be funny, but we actually get paid back our loans. And it's one of those sectors where we have been relatively successful in, without a doubt. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. So that also solves that. Okay, and let's get into more the understanding of the processes. So we've now empowered everybody on this call to be excited about battery technologies, and we've also stimulated some interest on maybe people that were hesitant in coming forward. Now they're going to come knocking on your door, and you're going to be opening the door, not your cat and not Bob. And what you recommend for a person in preparation are the key components that you would be looking for, or not that you personally, but you on behalf of IDC would be looking for in that funding application?
Okay, so let's just talk about one or two very important concepts. On the one side, one of the issues that we always have is the applicants tend to lack equity. So we do have, the DTI does have a black industrial scheme. We also have equity funds within the IDC, but we do expect the applicant to put in some money. A lot of people say, well, I'm a nice person and I've worked very hard and I cannot put in sweat equity. We really do need a cash contribution. That's on the one side. And the other side is you have to prove us that you've got a market. So you can have off takes. You could potentially say, I'm supplying A, B, C company, and I've got a contract. So then we can use a revolving credit facility. If you don't have contracts, then you have to prove that you're already in business and you're going to expand, and your chance of getting more business is very good. That's, I'll call it on the sales side. Then on the technical side, can you actually produce this battery solution and can you deliver it? And if the answer to that is yes, then to a large extent, we have a doable transaction. Now, the IDC funding really looks at two things. One, are you prepared to transform and become a level 4 BE player? One of the questions often is the IDC, can anybody approach the IDC? The answer is yes, on condition that you're prepared to get to a level 4 black empowerment rating. Number two is generally the more jobs you create, that results in a cheaper interest rate. So let's just summarize. On the one side, you have to have some money. If you're short in equity, there are equity funds. There's also an equity fund from the DTI. On the technical side, we have to be happy that you can actually produce and deliver. One question says, what happens if these things spill or catch fire? So we need a product that is deliverable and that your client will be happy to pay for. And then prove the market. Again, the market could be the REAP industry. It could be a contract on the RCF. It could be that you're just importing batteries and you manufacturing for the wholesale and retail markets. And then you have to prove that we've got the wholesale and retail market and your clients and your relationships and your network is strong enough to, obviously, for the sales. But really what you're doing is you're answering one question. Does this business generate enough cash to repay the IDC? And that's really what you're going to prove to us. Simple. It's simple yet complex. We all know it's quite. There's nothing simple about funding. That's why I'm saying maybe. I know sometimes IDC has not had the best reputation, or sometimes we've been very slow, or people find us unapproachable. But certainly, I think the way to do it is come and meet with us at the IDC. Let's talk around the deal. Let's look at the components, and let's try and help you and see whether we can put the transaction together. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Ian. I think that was a great answer. I find it very, very refreshing. Your honesty and straight talk. So I recall earlier you said everyone is welcome to come have a cup of coffee. So I think that I would also like to encourage everybody that to never think that what you have is maybe not worthwhile. Maybe take Ian up on his offer for that coffee. If the coffee machine's not working, I'm sure he can organize takeaways. But I really would encourage everybody. I think it's very valid to get the conversations going. Ian, there's a question more just on, I would say, where people are now maybe unpacking uniqueness of innovation. I have a question from you. A gentleman is asking the EV charging points. Would you still consider them as battery storage facilities as well?
Sure. So one of the companies that we looked at, just to show you a different approach, is again the underground mining. They've got the EV charging points for these underground tractors. So the question would be on EV charging points is the market big enough and who's going to use it? So remember, you have to repay back the loan. I think one of the difficulties we often encounter is people have this, they come to IDC and say, fund it because it's green and it's green technology. But you haven't answered who's using the product. And that's where often the debate just goes around in circles. We always used to say, well, there's no Eskom, there's no electricity because Eskom is broken, hence we need green, so anybody will buy it. That's not the answer. From a banking point of view, we have to be a little bit more pragmatic. And the answer is we need a market. And so step one, EV, as we stand today, is there a market for it? It's questionable. And it'd be quite difficult for you to prove to us that there's enough electric vehicles in South Africa that would warrant an EV network. So not that it can't happen, but you'd have to motivate, you have to prove to us that it's there. And remember, from a banking point of view, the more complex the market becomes, the more we ask you to contribute equity. So there's always that link between how strong is the market and how much equity we would ask you to contribute. Thank you, Joe.
Great. Thank you, Ian. And then, just from your personal opinion, I know you've touched on this, but I'd just like to sort of to hear your sort of closing remarks on this. In how do you feel that South African battery companies? You've told us there are some amazing companies out there. There's always this perception that we can't compete with China or with other entities. What are your thoughts on this? And you've been giving us a lot of insider information of what's going on. So I think that there's a lot more going on than we're all aware of. So I would just love you to unpack on that a little bit as a means of encouraging potential parties that want to come in and knock at your door.
So let me quote the Chinese warrior Sun Tzu, who always says the following: avoid what that is strong and attack what is weak. What is strong in China is the ability to manufacture batteries in a manner at a price point that we cannot even comprehend. So in my opinion, there's been a lot of talk about, can we manufacture batteries in this country? Right now, I'm talking right now as we stand, attack. That is what China is outstanding at. And if you're going to go and try and attack China, I think you're going to come off second best. Therefore, Sun Tzu says, attack what is weak. What they are not strong at is localization and local battery solutions for specific industries. So I would always say, take an industry that you want to dominate. Somebody mentioned marine. So go into marine. Let's see and do a strategy of what is the need in marine and how can you come up with a solution just for marine. And then dominate it. There's no doubt that you'll be successful because China's focus is not to sell, let's say, 20 batteries into the marine sector of South Africa. They want to sell thousands of these things all around the world. So that becomes your niche. So look for the niche, become proficient in that niche, and become so proficient that your competitors have a difficulty competing with you. So I know it's a bit of a roundabout answer, but that's the approach that I would take. And a lot of our clients, they've done exactly that. They're looking at certain areas and they're creating expertise within it. Now, expertise does not mean that you're going to have a system on the internet. Everybody's got battery management systems that work through the internet. That's as normal as can be. That just becomes another commodity. But rather, getting back to the marine example, have a great solution for different types of boats that can be accessed through battery management systems on the internet. But step one, take an industry and dominate it and see what solutions you can come up with. Because there is a willingness, even though lithium and batteries may be expensive, there is a willingness from corporates to swap over. Because anybody who's in the lithium industry would say they can prove that this thing actually makes commercial sense over time. Your recharge rate, your cycles, your electricity output makes commercial sense. So now it's a question of dominating that sector. Thank you, Joe.
Right. So I think we've come to the end of our time. I think we've really sort of started the conversations. I really welcome anybody. I've put my email address up there for a lot of you. Ian's email address is up there. If you don't get hold of Ian, you get hold of me. I'll make sure that you get the questions and the queries. From my side in the SAESA, thank you very much. We see you as an important stakeholder all of the battery players in South Africa. I want to thank you for sort of reassuring us today. One, that the IDC is also open and welcoming, and your desk is ready and it's filled with coffee, and that your battery charging side is on the positive side up, so that you're welcome, open, and ready to engage. I would also like to thank you and compliment you on your understanding of the market, which I think can really assist a lot of the role players. So I would really encourage everybody to approach you to come and see what could be unpacked, because maybe one strategy just needs to be molded a little bit into another. And I think that anybody coming to you, it sounds like that they're really in capable hands. So thank you very much for that, and thank you on behalf of all of the battery players in South Africa that would want to come and approach you. Very well done on your presentation and your answers. Thank you. And then I'd just like to thank Mr. Frankfurt as well for obviously making these webinars and the platforms so available and accessible. And I would encourage everybody on this call to engage further, put out those questions there. Let's get these conversations going. I'm sure there's a lot of unanswered questions which people would maybe like to put forward in confidence or privacy, or even for us to put out into the marketplace. Thank you very much.
Joe, thank you very much for that closing. Ian, I'd just like to echo what you said a little bit earlier. It really is an exciting time to be in the renewable space, and I think there is so much opportunity out there, and I think it's just about finding that niche and finding that opportunity, as you've just mentioned. And then, yeah, I really enjoyed the way you answered the question. People felt it was so open and honest, and I really think that and do believe that the IDC is really open for business. So I urge you all to make contact with Ian and get the conversations going. And then just from our side, a big thank you for attending the Solar Power Africa, SAESA and IDC webinar. It was an important topic, and I hope that it imparted some useful knowledge that you'll be able to take and apply to your businesses. And then please join us for our next webinar that's taking place next week, Thursday, and it's going to be focused on EPR. So also another very, very important topic. And then just Ian and Joe, thanks once again. And to everybody, enjoy your afternoon, and hopefully we see you all next week, Thursday. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.